The worst year for a lot of us for our mental as well as physical health. So joining us this morning is best-selling author, coach Lisa Goldenthal.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa G, your host. You're at the top of your game, yet the game is changing faster than ever. Strategies that got you here aren't the ones that'll keep you here. The pressure is relentless, and the fear of obsolescence looms large. That's why I'm here. Welcome to the new podcast series, Disrupted: How to Be Gritty and Unlock Performance in Business, Mindset, Wellness, and Success to help you master disruption.
Thanks for coming, and I'll see you soon. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. I'm Lisa G, and so excited today to introduce our guest. He's a board-certified internist, trained chef, chef MD, New York Times bestselling author twice, and regenerative farmer, pioneering the culinary medicine movement. His most recent book is Indoor Epidemic: 93% inside steals your sleep, focus, and years. 7% outdoor RX restores it. I am so excited. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. John LaPuma.
Hey, Lisa, thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
Well, I'm excited about this topic because obviously we're all spending too much time indoors. So why don't we just jump right into it and talk about some of our leadership blind spots?
Yeah. Well, of course, leaders don't take care of themselves, right?
Right.
And as leaders, we often spend that 93% of time inside, 86% in buildings, and 7% in vehicles. Only 7% outside, which is less than 12 hours a week. And most of that time is like incidental. We just walk to the car, we commute, or we're in the parking lot. None of it's intentional. And I think leaders don't understand that that type of time, the time that we spend outside, is actually a health tool. It can actually help us reset our, not just our circadian rhythm, but our burnout. I think burnout is actually a biological mismatch. It's not having too much work. It's being in the wrong habitat for too long and not allowing your brain to reset so that you're able to handle stresses as they come up.
Wow, that's why I was so excited to have this conversation with you today, because I myself always feel recharged and refreshed when I do get outside. And we're talking about off camera before we even started about, okay, now it's cold, so I gotta bundle up and still go outside, right? Even if it's cold out.
You bet. I mean, I lived in Chicago. I know you've lived in cold climates before too. And and it is very much a bundle up and go kind of feel. But
Yeah.
a lot of people think that nature or the engagement that nature offers, the help and tools that it offers, are really only offered on vacations. Like when I speak to leaders, it's a vacation in Patagonia, or they went to the Grand Canyon with their family, or it's the rose gardens in Portland that they've made a pilgrimage to. But it doesn't have to be far away. You know, nature is as close as the park down the street. It's the lettuce in your salad. It's the dog by your feet. It's the breeze blowing the curtains. Nature is actually much closer than you think. And even houseplants provide that type of connection with the outside world, which we actually have forgotten very much because our lives are kind of all in front of screens, aren't they?
Oh yeah. All like especially since the pandemic, I'd say, we're all remote first these days, and I
That's
love the
right.
freedom that
Yeah.
gives me because I travel all the time. But how is that really impacting our performance, the fact that we're spending 93% of our time indoors?
Well, one way is that indoor air is pretty stale. In fact, over 1,000 parts per million of carbon dioxide lowers cognitive performance by about 15%. And with offices, particularly modern offices and modern homes, being kind of tightly sealed, we don't get any engagement with outdoor air, which is often much cleaner than indoor air. Same thing for the toxins inside that are off paints and carpets and lots of artificial things. And that impairs performance as well. Having the kind of regular drumbeat of having to do work is actually a powerful biological force. And we want to do work. We love work that's
Right.
meaningful and purposeful. But that's dulled by being inside too much. Our circadian rhythms are completely off. Many of us get up in the dark and we get home in the dark. And we don't take, and as a consequence, our bodies think it's always daytime. And that leads to not just sleep disorders, but metabolic disorders, diabetes and heart disease. And we've seen this actually recently in a study published in JAMA just a couple of months ago, where they followed 95,000 people over 9.5 years and traced how much artificial light exposure they got. Artificial light exposure at night between 12:30 and 6 in the morning. Those people who got the most artificial light exposure, you get up and watch TV or turn on the room lights or have artificial lights before you, had twice as many heart attacks, one and a
Oh,
half times as many strokes, more atrial fibrillation, and 30% more heart failure than the people who got the least nighttime light. So, what going outside does to enhance performance is very specific and targeted. It's not just like stepping outside, because anybody can do that. And if that was the case, then incidental time would be enough. It has to be very specific things. And in the book, Indoor Epidemic, which you were kind enough to mention, it'll be out in March, we detail the 7 major steps that you need to take and about 100 different other micro dosing steps that can get you closer to repurposing the time that you spend outside into a healthcare modality that improves performance and reduces hacks on or dings on longevity, actually can extend biological age, and more importantly, gives you a firmer mood and a firmer way to think about life that is not so erratic and not so pulled by our sympathetic nervous system.
so all this time that we're spending indoors, when it starts getting dark, especially this time of year, we're actually recording this in the winter, whenever you guys are watching this. So that's affecting our emotional regulation too.
Dramatically. And we see this actually in kids who have 30% more prescriptions for antidepressants than even 10 years ago, and teenagers. And the anxiety epidemic, I don't have to tell you about how that's affecting children, but adults have this too. And it's a mental health wear down of being not getting purposeful outdoor time. For example, you need to go outdoors for 10 or 15 minutes in the morning to look at the morning sun, not directly at the sun, and atmospheric light is enough to tell your brain to give you enough cortisol in the morning to wake up, actually helps your coffee work better. And
Really?
yeah, it does. Because it works in a complementary way. It gives you cortisol, and caffeine gives you an adrenergic stimulus, which means gives you the little fight or flight response that goes, okay, get up, let's go. And it helps your brain make melatonin that night so that you get to sleep more easily that night. If you don't get that 10 or 15 minutes in the morning of light, your body continues to have a cortisol level that's kind of high the whole day. And that not only makes you feel stressed out, but it makes you have make worse decisions. Your decisions are rushed. You feel like you're wired but tired all the time, and you don't know why. And the reason is that your body is trapped in an environment that the biology was not designed for. And as leaders, we spend nearly all of our time in offices and in cars and in trains. We're getting from one place to another. You mentioned you just got home from travel, and I too travel a lot. But we can fix this. It's a fixable problem with deliberate, targeted, specific, time-based interventions that are just between 2 and 5 hours per week of the nearly 12 that we already spend outside.
Wow. So we should take meetings like out on pickleball court or at the golf range or for a walk instead of only like Zoom, getting zoomed out all the time.
There's wisdom in that, Lisa.
I like it.
Yeah.
And you talked already about some of the indoor CO2 levels and how dangerous that really is. So,
Well, some offices have carbon dioxide monitors to purposely exchange air to lower their CO2 levels in the office so that workers can be brighter. Yeah, Amazon famously built an entire sphere in Seattle, as
Yes.
you know about,
Yes.
and they filled it with 40,000 different plants, in part because of the phytoncides that are released by those plants, the chemicals that tell plants how to communicate with one another and warn them for against insects and help them share resources. Those phytoncides actually also have positive effects on us. And so when you go outside, particularly in a wooded area and a green area, not only does your own cortisol level drop by 21% within 20 minutes, which helps you be calm and centered and make better decisions as you're calm and centered, but it also allows you to use your senses. A lot of executives use logic and lists and notifications, and we need those things. But we're
Right.
missing a whole other part of our brain that taps into what our employees are feeling and what our partners are feeling. And that's the senses. That's how we experience nature, by the way. We experience nature with our senses by looking and touching and listening and smelling and tasting. Those are the five senses. And
Right.
that is a is an extra tool that we haven't deployed adequately as leaders. But getting our morning light, getting our 1 minute microsets for the horizon. If you look at the horizon once an hour for a minute, it relaxes the little ciliary muscles around your eyes. You don't feel as fatigued. You lessen your chance for worsening myopia. In Singapore and in much of Asia, myopia is a pandemic. It's 90% of adolescents. And myopia by itself may not be so bad. You know, you wear glasses, you get eye drops, it's fixed. But about 5% of myopia is high myopia, which can result in blindness by the age of 30 in some people. Only about 5%, but why risk it at all if all it takes is looking at the horizon away from this device right here and instead giving your eyes a break?
I do that, and I'm so glad that it's beneficial. I'm so glad and fortunate that I can do that, and now I know that's a hack. So getting outside in the morning is a hack you're recommending, but we have to do it for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yes, 15 minutes with about 90 minutes awakening. And that's because the body runs on a clock. Most of us don't understand
Right.
this. It's a relatively new theory of aging to know that every organ has a clock. And so that's why your heart, some people, I mean, one theory is that some people get heart disease because their heart has aged faster than the rest of their body. And same thing with kidney or liver or lung. You have a central clock in your brain that runs the whole thing, and that's the clock that you're resetting when you get 10 to 15 minutes of morning light. Same thing, interestingly, for gardening, which is another hack, which I think of as a reset rather than a hack, to be candid, because having your hands in soil and hands in the soil of a houseplant counts, even if it's a succulent. I have houseplants as well as I'm privileged to live on a farm, so we have lots of plants. But having your hands in the soil acts as a natural antidepressant because of a bacteria called M. vacci, which helps to make serotonin. And you change your own microbiome, get better immunity, and improve just by having any type of gardening. And about 70 million Americans think of themselves as gardeners, including many executives. And when I mentioned this subject for the very first time about 10 years ago with my colleagues, physician colleagues at the hospital where I'm on the medical staff, my two colleagues told me immediately about their flower gardens and how they felt restored in their flower gardens and having their hands in the soil. And that's one of the ways I began to know that I was on to something by telling people in leadership positions that you're mismatched with your biology. Your biology is mismatched with the office. It's not just the
Wow.
office that
Yeah.
needs help. You need help by getting outside the office so you can do a better job inside the office.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And I really I'm learning so much from you. I know we both have this in common that we're passionate about biohacking and anti-aging and being that you're an expert on nutrition, I'm assuming, is there any biohacks you want to share with our audience in addition to like the getting outside and not being around too much artificial light for longevity? I'd love to talk about longevity myself.
Yes, I wrote The Real Age Diet and Cooking the Real Age Way with my partner Michael Roizen, leader in wellness and longevity, founding director of the Cleveland Clinic. And one of the things that we found and that later we developed in Chef MD and our chefmd.com work was that people really need and like simple, and that food that can help to make you feel and actually be measurably younger doesn't have to taste like cardboard or like the box itself. It can be flavorful and full of color and vibrancy. And one thing that people really like and is very consonant with nature, because much of the damage that indoor epidemic does is because of inflammation. And inflammation is an underlying cause of not just accelerated aging, but also many chronic diseases,
Right.
from heart disease and brain diseases as well, arthritis certainly. So my acronym for this is BITES: berries, Indian spices, teas, eggs, and salmon. BITES. And those are simple foods that you can take advantage of that lower inflammation. They're colorful, they're flavorful, and it's easy to remember. BITES.
Wow, I'm going to remember bites. That is so helpful. So because we have great salmon up here and I love eggs. And does that mean we have to stay away from pretty much like carbs and sugar and dairy, or can we still have any of those?
I think every food can be in the diet except for ultra processed foods. Ultra processed foods really are evil in many ways because they disappear. And we've studied them and understand that they are evil because they put calories on so quickly and you don't have any satiety with them and kind of don't know what's in them and they're largely chemical. There's also a phenomenon of ultra processed time. That's how we understand time now. We just sort of run through it. It disappears. And and that's terrible because we don't savor time anymore. We don't savor sitting down and looking at one another, savor sitting at a table, savor walking on a golf course or the social part of pickleball enough. And we need to. And when we do that, we almost inevitably are outside. We have an activity that we're doing together. And
Right,
that's some of the benefit of being engaging with nature outside for leaders. It's actually social. Being outside is a place that you run into other people. It's not necessarily the Grand Canyon or the Pacific Ocean. Those are beautiful places and we both love them. But nature is social because you meet somebody walking to the park. If you meet somebody playing exercise, that, by the way, is called playing pickleball. That exercise, by the way, is called green exercise. Almost anything you do, and if there's one activity that's the most pivotal other than morning light, it's exercising outside. That's why exercising in a gym doesn't really feel restorative. I mean, you kind of get the
right.
work done,
Yeah, it's not the
right?
same.
You
It's not
get
the same as going outside.
no, you get stronger. I like being in the gym to get stronger,
Yeah.
and uh, and I'm fortunate to have a great trainer. But we've been going outside more, and I am outside deliberately more because of the farm and the pickleball. But it's biologically not as restorative because your brain is finally escaping to outside of this mismatched environment. When you're inside in a gym, you're still working out, you're still within those four walls, you're still biologically confined, you still have high CO2 levels, you still have off-gassing, and you still have, if you're lucky, a window to outside or
Yeah.
like the French countryside on a treadmill. And If you do, that's great. The French countryside on a treadmill or a window outside is halfway there. It's still useful, but it isn't quite as good as getting into fresher air. It isn't quite as good as to running into somebody you haven't seen outside. It isn't quite as good. And actually, there are data for this. You lower your blood pressure more when you do the same exercise outside than inside. Um, Almost uniformly, exercising outside in any structured way is better for your body than exercising inside. And that's relatively new work as well, but it's become emblematic of the green exercise movement. Much of the research for this is done at the University of Essex in the UK.
Wow. You are just like a wealth of knowledge on how we can live a healthier life. And it's so important to me as I aged and as my audience gets older too, to have this information. Any final words that you want to leave us with on how we can live a healthier, longer, happier life?
It's that you have more control than you think, I think. 80% of heart disease is preventable, 50% of depression preventable, 40% of all cancers are environmental and preventable. But it starts with recognizing that our biology is a mismatch for being inside. We were designed differently, we evolved differently. And and that's a fixable problem with just 2 to 5 hours of repurposed time from inside to outside. And then one of the best parts about it is that it's free. I'm not selling a device. I'm not selling
Yeah.
a supplement. You don't have to buy stuff here. You do
Yeah.
need very specific, intentional, targeted interventions. It's not just step outside and it happens. It's specific, it's medical. And that's what's exciting, that it's accessible to so many people and it's so easy and it's a lot of fun.
Well, Dr. John the Puma, thanks for being such a fabulous guest on Whole CEO with Lisa G.
It's a pleasure, Lisa. Thanks a lot.